This may be one of the most important and the most challenging questions that we can ask ourselves when it comes to intimacy and relationships. And that is, am I with the right person? How do we know? How can we tell the difference between a relationship that's challenging but is the right relationship for us and one that is just continuing to recycle old difficulties, old patterns, and isn't really evolving and changing? Rest assured, human beings have been asking themselves this question since the beginning of time. And what I want to do today is to share a couple of really simple things that can help you navigate much of the confusion that can come up. And it's confusion that is in some ways new to who and what we are as human beings. There were times when relationships grew out of community. In other words, you were born into a community and you knew the people that you grew up with intimately. You knew them backwards and forwards, you knew their family, you knew their backgrounds, you knew who they were, you knew how they responded to a million different circumstances. And then as we move into an age where we start to explore intimate relationship, we then make choices about who to be with all of this background information. That's how human relationships started. We don't live in that world anymore. And what that does is it creates all sorts of new challenges for us to navigate in terms of how do we really know each other? How do we really understand someone's deepest values and commitments? And so in the video today, I want to share a couple of things that I've found in my life and in the work that I do with people that just makes a massive difference. One thing we want to get clear about if we're going to make sense of whether the person in front of us, the person we're currently with, is the right person for us, is to know something like, what game are we playing? And this is a question that most people aren't deeply exploring. And what I mean by what game are we playing, I mean, what are you really here for? What are you up to in your life? If everything were taken away from you and you had to start over from scratch, what would be most important? What would be what you would come back to continue investing in or to move forward in your life? Understanding the game we're playing is important because if we want to make a relationship work, it's actually vital that we're playing the same game. And over and over and over again in my work with people, what I discover when people are having a lot of difficulty in their relationships is that they're not playing the same game. And even worse, they don't even know that they're not playing the same game. So then the question becomes, well, how do we find out? How do I discover what game I'm playing and whether my partner is playing the same game as me? One thing we can look to is, what have we populated our lives with? What are the things that are important to us? What will we sacrifice in order to maintain in our lives? These types of questions start to uncover an underlying reason for being that is really the game we're playing with our lives. So for some people, that might be a sense of well-being, maybe happiness. Maybe people are wanting to create wealth and stability for themselves and their family, and that's their game. Whatever your game is, compatibility becomes a central piece in terms of what makes relationships work. But it's not the only piece. What also matters is that the game we're playing runs deep enough where the natural difficulties and challenges that arise in life and in relationships don't immediately destabilize and destroy your relationship. What I'm saying here is that the game you're playing, the game you're both playing, you and your partner, has to have a foundation deep enough to hold and remain stable in the midst of all of the challenges that go along with life. And that includes things like job loss or financial insecurity. It could be the introduction of children. It could be illness or death within the family. If you want a relationship that really lasts, if you want a relationship with roots that allows you to grow into the distant future, what you need is a why, a reason for being, and a game worth playing that can stand the test of all of those things. I'm going to ask you to do two things that I think will make a massive difference for you in clarifying whether the person you're with is right for you. The first one is a writing exercise. What I want you to do is I want you to write down all the things about your current relationship. What's hard about it? What would you rather it be, or what are the things that you'd like to change? What do you appreciate? Do a kind of a complete assessment of the current relationship. And then compare that to an idea, like how do you want to feel? How do you want the interactions between you and your partner to go? How do you want to navigate conflict together? What do you want to build into the future together? And once you've done that journal exercise, that writing exercise, I'm going to ask you to invite your partner to sit down and have a conversation. If you haven't already talked about your core values, things that are most important to you, what kind of relationship you want to build, and how you plan to go about building it, that's the first conversation to have. If you feel like you've talked about all that stuff and you still feel like you're not quite on the same page, then the conversation is a bit different, maybe a bit edgy. But the conversation is about, why is it that I don't feel totally connected in this relationship? Ask your partner whether they feel the same way. This kind of a conversation for some people it's like death. They don't want to have it. They don't want to engage that dialogue because they're afraid that it'll mean the end of the relationship. But what I'm inviting here is a kind of transparency exercise, first with yourself and then with your partner, that cuts through all of the kind of false construction and the false behavior that is, instead of designed to kind of deepen authenticity and connection and intimacy, is designed to kind of cover up the truth that's there in the hopes that we can kind of maintain a relationship in the absence of that truth. So what then you can move into is a kind of dialogue with your partner that cuts right to the heart of, what are we doing here? What are we really up to? And if those things are the same and things still don't work, what adjustments do we need to make? What changes can we choose? What compromises might be required for us to make the thoughts and feelings and ideas that we have about our perfect relationship a reality in our day-to-day? Try those two things. The writing exercise where you deeply explore the current nature of your relationship, what works, what doesn't, what you like, what you don't, and compare that to how you really want it to be. And then, if you're willing, and if your partner is willing, have a sit down and conversation about why there's a disconnect, why there's a difference between how it is and how you'd like it to be. And when the two of you are willing to do the math and the follow through on bringing those two things together, where the way it is the way you want it to be, you will have a relationship worth keeping. You'll have a relationship that's sustainable, and you'll have a relationship that you know the person you're looking across from is the right person for you. So I wish you well, and I look forward to sharing more.